welcome in. Happy summer. Today I thought I would do just like a little yap because the last video that I posted, I've never had a video do that well. And since then, a lot of new friends have joined this channel, and I'm so grateful and happy to have you here. I really love making videos, even though it's just kind of a for fun thing on the side. But I thought I'd just do a little yap today, slash kind of an introduction to me, who I am, and this channel. I'm drinking some black tea today in my Peter Rabbit mug. It's still very hot, so I'm gonna let it cool down. But there are a few things on my mind today that I figured I would talk a little bit about. So first, I guess I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm Cece, or Cecilia. I grew up with the nickname Cece, but as I've gotten older, I just graduated college, and I feel more like a Cecilia these days, so I don't know. I'm kind of going by both, but I've started to introduce myself more as Cecilia. It feels very grown up, very womanly. So you can think of me as either. I'm based out of Oregon, though I do hope to relocate sometime soon for a full-time job, fingers crossed. I was born and raised here. I was born and raised in Eugene. You may know Eugene for U of O or the sports or okay, actually, I'm going to lead myself down a little side tangent. So, like I said, born and raised in Eugene, and I talked about this in another video, but I have been listening to a lot of Sufjan Stevens, specifically the Carrie and Lowell album, because that album, a lot of it was written about Oregon generally, but also specifically Eugene. So as I'm kind of in this period of my life of new things happening, things are changing, I'm kind of at that beginning stage of saying goodbye to the place that I grew up in. That album has been so comforting and lovely and heartwarming for me, even though a lot of the lyrics are very devastating given his circumstances, but that album has just been on repeat for me lately. And like I said, I talked about this, I think in my winter favorites, but like this whole year, that album has really just been close to my heart, and I've really enjoyed listening to it. But all that to say, I'm from Eugene, Oregon. I plan to leave here very soon. I work in the music industry professionally, so I do things like journalism, and I kind of work on the press side, but I also do marketing and strategic partnerships, kind of event planning stuff. I work at 1824 Universal Music Group, which is UMG's like college rep marketing team. It's really fun to get to work on a team of so many amazing creatives that are also my age, and we're kind of all pursuing the same goals. That environment has been so lovely and I adore it. But like I said, I'm probably going to be moving soon and I will find a new job, hopefully. I also run a music magazine called The Music Box. It's my baby. I started it in my freshman year of college, so 2022, and it was kind of just like a little music blog, but now it's a real publication and there's over 50 contributors, which honestly blows my mind so much when I think about it. But it's just so much fun to be able to write about all of these amazing artists and be able to cover them and give them the love and visibility that they deserve. So I feel really passionate about that. But in school, I studied humanities, and particularly with a focus on the classics. So this also leads me into my next topic of conversation. I just saw the Odyssey movie. So as someone who has studied the Odyssey, the book written by Homer, I have so many thoughts about this movie. And I was kind of, also there's going to be spoilers, and I'll put like a timestamp on the screen for you to skip to if you don't want to hear the spoilers. But so like I said, I've studied Homer a lot. I've read the Iliad twice, I've read the Odyssey, and the most recent time I read the Odyssey, I read Emily Wilson's translation. So it's very fresh in my mind. I read it in May. It was part of my class, which was amazing because it felt like also prep for the movie coming out. And we talked about the movie a lot in my class, just saying like we wonder what it's going to be like, if it's going to do justice to the book. And I will say kind of the overarching point of my thoughts on that movie were that it was a great movie, but it failed kind of to adapt the world of Homer. the world that Homer creates in the Odyssey. And I think a lot of big plot points, big things, were left out of the movie. Things that were kind of crucial to the plot, in my opinion, the biggest being when Odysseus goes and visits Nausicaa and her family before he reaches home in Ithaca. And that whole part, which is such a crucial part of the epic, was just cut out. And like, I get it because the movie was already 3 hours long, so I'm sure if that part had been included into the plot, it would have been like 4 or 5 hours. But nonetheless, I was really disappointed that that was cut out because it really is just such a crucial part, and it also gives a lot of insight into Athena and kind of how she functions as a character within the epic. And speaking of Athena, in the movie, I really felt like her character just fell so flat. Like, all of the characters just felt very watered down to me, and maybe that's just because we didn't get enough time to really know them. And Odysseus in the book, kind of his whole thing, every plot point in the book is alluding to how much of a liar Odysseus is, how he's so conniving and kind of wily and just like, he's a trickster. I mean, Emily Wilson's translation, the first line is like, tell me about a complicated man. He is a complicated man, and I just don't think the movie did justice to just how rotten he really was. It acknowledges that he didn't really want to go home. I think some part of it was said in the movie, but and also like with Calypso and Circe, Calypso's island, don't even get me started. Like, they butchered every part of that was in the book, and in the movie Calypso was almost like kind of a protector or like a guide to Odysseus. And the whole Lotus thing also doesn't happen in the book, but she was kind of painted as someone that really deeply cared about Odysseus and was trying to help him see things plainly, but that it was also kind of his fault that he was on the island for so long because he kept eating the lotus. That doesn't happen in the book. Calypso is like, she basically forces him to stay there for so long, and he wants to get home, but he's also like in a romantic relationship with her, and it's just like, and I'm pretty sure the book described Calypso's island as being very lush and green and beautiful, like a tropical paradise. And that, like, the movie was just flatlands. And why was she wrapped in like this tortilla blanket looking thing? I have so many thoughts about it. And then I do think they did a decent job with Circe, but they also cut out the crucial part where he stays with her for a year, and cuts out the whole part about them being in a relationship or being in some kind of sexual relationship in favor of him just like almost not outdoing her, but almost like outsmarting her in some ways. You know, that's kind of how the movie plays it off, and just makes her seem like an old hag, which in the book she's also kind of portrayed as that. But Circe also is a very strong woman who has been through a lot, you know, and she had every right to treat Odysseus's men the way she did. And I love in the movie, the one, I will give them credit for this, I love when she turns them into pigs and then Odysseus tells her to turn them back. She says, go back to your disguises, or come back to your disguises, something like that. I thought that was really genius, and I think it was a really, really beautiful line to put in. Also, I just don't think Telemachus got as much of a storyline as he deserves. The whole thing with him, who is it? Is it Menelaus' son? There was someone that Telemachus was traveling with when he was going to find his father, and there's kind of like an implied relationship between these two boys, and that whole thing was just omitted, gone. I won't go on too long about the Odyssey, but I just like, coming from the perspective of someone who has studied classics and has studied the book and studied the Homer and the Emily Wilson translation, I don't know. I think it was a good Christopher Nolan movie, and I think that a lot of the people that gave it 5 stars and just raved about how it's the best Nolan work of art yet, I don't think that they read the book, read the epic, really know anything about the cultural weight of the Odyssey, because all of these all of these myths were really just word of mouth before Homer put them into a text format. So we don't know kind of where they started and where they ended, other than like we only know what the myths were at Homer's point in time. And I guess I just have issue with everyone praising this movie, saying it was the best thing that they've seen, the best Nolan movie ever. But ugh. Okay, I'm just going to rewind to what I said in the beginning. I think it was great as an action adventure movie, but I don't think it was accurate to the epic, and I don't think that it did it full justice. Some of the most crucial, important parts were cut out or changed or just not quite right. I'm really sad by how much Athena specifically was watered down, because in the epic, she is very much Team Odysseus all the way. She kind of almost doesn't really care about any other humans other than Odysseus, like any humans that really appear in the novel. She wants to help him get home, but she's also kind of guiding him on this journey that is experiencing delays, you know? She knows Odysseus's mind and kind of plays into that. And she also has kind of trickster characteristics just like Odysseus's, and I think in some ways in the epic they really feed off of each other's personalities, you know? And that just wasn't represented at all in the movie. Although Zendaya was amazing. She's amazing in everything. But I am sad about that. Anyway, I won't yap anymore about the Odyssey, but I'd love to know what you thought of the movie. Okay, and then the last little thing I wanted to talk about was some book updates. So, since I graduated, it's been about a month since I have been out of school. I have been reading and writing so much. I forgot how wonderful it is to just be absorbed by literature and be absorbed by books. And there's a couple that I've read recently that really have stuck with me, and I wanted to talk about them. And the one I actually finished today is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I did not anticipate liking this book as much as I did. And if you don't know Sally Rooney, you might know her from Normal People. She wrote the book, which was then adapted into the TV show, and I did really enjoy the TV show, and I was just thinking yesterday that I need to rewatch it because it's been a long time. But anyway, Normal People, the book, honestly wasn't my favorite, and I think a lot of it is just my issue with how Sally Rooney, she doesn't use quotations in dialogue, and that really bugs my brain. Like, it hurts my head. But this book was so good that I just didn't care, honestly. And it's been sitting in my TBR stack for so long. So basically it follows these 4 people. There's 2 women, Eileen and Alice, and they are best friends. They have been, I believe, since college. And it's it goes through a lot of their correspondence back and forth because they live in different cities. So they email each other a lot, and they're both just kind of really sad and unhappy. And Eileen has this childhood friend named Simon that she's been in love with for years and years and years. So it's also kind of chronicling her relationship with him and what is happening between them. And then Alice also meets someone named Felix on Tinder, and they go on a date, and it doesn't go very well, but then they run into each other later, and they end up kind of trying again almost. And it's just, I haven't read a book like this in so long that is just so much of the human experience. Like, it's not really a ton of plot. Like, I wouldn't say that there's really a climax or really like satisfying ending to the book, in the sense that it's just kind of like a peek into somebody's life. And so much, I used to love books like that, and I read them all the time, and I just haven't really found one recently that I enjoyed, or I just hadn't gravitated towards that style in a while. And as I was reading this, I kind of fell back in love with it. Sally Rooney just does such a good job at portraying what it's like to be human and all of these thoughts. And I think it also just does a really good job of showing the depth that women have kind of in comparison to the depth that men have. Like, one thing I thought about a lot was Felix, who is Alice's kind of boyfriend in the beginning and then turns into like a boyfriend. I don't even really know what to describe them. He reminds me a lot of Holden Caulfield, who's the main character in The Catcher in the Rye. And The Catcher in the Rye is my favorite book of all time. I reread it every Christmas, even though I've kind of gotten the tingle to reread it, like now. I guess I only read it 6 months ago, but I don't know, that book just always calls to me. And I think the way that Felix acts in this book is very similar to how Holden acts. He kind of like doesn't have a filter. He's kind of rude and kind of just thinks everyone around him sucks in some ways, but he still loves them. This book just truly blew my mind in a really beautiful way. I started it yesterday and I finished it this morning, so it was one that felt really good to get through so quickly. And there was a quote that I wrote down that struck me so hard that I would like to read to you. I'm reading it out of my beautiful Peter Popper Press notebook. This is my favorite stationery brand. I'm probably going to do a stationery video too, because I just love this brand. Anyways, so the context of this quote is that Alice is writing an email to Eileen, so this is part of their correspondence. All my mania for culture, for really good things, for knowing about jazz recordings and red wine and Danish furniture, even about Keats and Shakespeare and James Baldwin. What if it's all a form of vanity, or even worse, a little bandage over the initial wound of my origins? I have put between myself and my parents such a gulf of sophistication that it's impossible for them to touch me now or to reach me at all. And I look back across that gulf, not with a sense of guilt or loss, but with relief and satisfaction. Am I better than they are? Certainly not, although maybe luckier. But I am different, and I don't understand them very well, and I can't live with them or draw them into my inner world, or for that matter write about them. All my filial duties are nothing but a series of rituals on my part designated to shield myself from criticism while giving nothing of myself away. I've never heard a description between a child and her parents that made more sense to me than that. Like, it really resonated, but it also it put into words things that I've thought and I've felt in my heart, and that kind of relatability is just shocking to me because it's really in a very specific factor of my life, and that quote alone has made me want to read more Sally Rooney, because I think she just hit the nail on the head, and it's such a beautiful way to put into words what Alice was feeling about her family and the frustration and all of it. So those are my thoughts on Beautiful World, Where Are You? And the other book I wanted to talk about is Things I Don't Want to Know by Deborah Levy. In my last video, I mentioned that I had started reading this book, and I did finish it, I believe, about a week ago. And that book also has made me want to read more Deborah Levy. She is incredible. She writes in a very unique way where her stories, her personal stories are written like fiction. And not in the sense that they're hard to believe, but more in the sense that, like, you lose yourself in the story, kind of in the same way that you do in a fictional story. And I think it also brought a lot of great perspective on, she grew up in a very unique environment surrounded by things that a lot of, like, typical American kids would never know or never understand. I admire her a lot for how much she opened up about what has gone on in her life. And I don't really want to spoil it because it's, like I said, it's such a unique situation. I tried not to give too many spoilers for the other book too, but she just has a wonderful way with words, and I'm going to leave it like that. And I plan to read the rest of her living autobiography series. There's 3 books. And I do have the second one. I checked it out from the library. So I'm really excited to start reading that. Those are kind of the 2 big reading updates that I have. I've read a couple other things, but none of them have stuck with me in the same way that these 2 have, so I definitely recommend them. Thank you so freaking much for being here. If you recently subscribed, I can't tell you how much that means to me. I love to share little bits of my life online, but I feel like YouTube is really the place I can concentrate it, like, kind of aesthetically, and I feel like a lot of my life I have to talk about my work in the music industry, and here, as much as I do love it and I do adore talking about it, I feel like I can really let my love for things like literature and the classics and language, all these things can really have their moment to shine because they're also such an important part of my life and a part of my being. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around. thank you so much again for being here. It truly means the world. So, thank you, and I will see you next time.